Hi, and welcome. I'm trying this new form of content where I kind of just talk about things that are special to me, almost like a podcast. Feel free to turn off the video while you're listening or watch my Balatro gameplay. The views are incredibly appreciated, regardless of whether you actually pay attention or not. Before we begin, I think I should give some disclaimers. First of all, there are definitely going to be some spoilers for both Evangelion and Gurren Lagann. I highly recommend watching both these shows, especially spoiler free, but if you don't feel like it, it's okay. I will try my best to mitigate them. And second of all, I'm still working on audio, so there are some peaks and there are some lip smacking. I tried my best to fix it, but I hope you can get past that and support me anyway. Thank you so much. I've been thinking quite a bit about some of the most important stories in my life, and when I think of that question, I immediately think of two of the main ones that I think are so important to me are Neon Genesis Evangelion, the hoodie that I'm currently donning, and Gurren Lagann. They exist in a way that almost complement each other. Such similarity within their respective stories, drastically different outcomes, and I think the difference in outcomes becomes apparent because of how the characters are treated, how the characters are taken care of within the story. Now, I think the best place to start is with Evangelion. Evangelion was released so much earlier, or I guess not so much earlier. Evangelion was released earlier and kind of sets the groundwork for Gurren Lagann's existence, actually, because the main creator of Gurren Lagann actually worked on Evangelion. And I think it's because of this experience working on Evangelion that he was able to come up with such an amazing story. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's start by breaking down Evangelion. Now, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and potential spoiler warning, I will try not to, but there are parts of the stories that I will have to address that could be considered a spoiler. But Neon Genesis Evangelion is a story about a boy named Shinji. He's about 14 years old. And right off the bat, this is important for me because when I was 14, 15 years old is when I started watching this. And as I'll explain later, I had quite a few mental health issues, namely depression, that I was dealing with when I started watching Evangelion. So the reason it sticks with me so much is because of the reflection that I saw within myself in the main character Shinji. Now, Shinji, 14-year-old boy, Shinji is alone in the world. Essentially, his father has abandoned him, his mother has died, and for a large portion of his life, he doesn't have any figures to look up to, people to aspire to believe in, people who are supporting him. There is no leadership. His father is there. He's the leader. He's a reoccurring character. He's the leader of very important group in the story, but he doesn't lead, if that makes sense. He is in charge, but he does not uplift the people around him. He does not do things that boost the morale of the people he works with. And while sure, I guess in a company setting, that's not necessarily the job of the boss, the leader, but he's also a father. And despite being a father, he has essentially abandoned his child. And that leads us to a different scene within Evangelion where after we're introduced to Shinji, we immediately are in an action scene. And he gets picked up by his soon to be caretaker, a woman named Misato. She works for Shinji's father. She was sent to retrieve Shinji because, as we learn later, they need new pilots. What is a pilot? Well, essentially, the story of Evangelion goes Shinji becomes a pilot for a giant mech suit called an Evangelion. And the Evangelion's job is to defend humanity, to defend Earth from these aliens, essentially. And the aliens are called angels. And these angels descend from the sky, or they appear on Earth and are there to destroy, I guess. And the Evangelions are meant to defeat. But for whatever reasons within the story, the pilots have to be 14-year-olds. And so Shinji is called up because he is a prospect for being a pilot. And of course, we wouldn't have a story if he didn't become a pilot. And so right away, Shinji sees this as a path to his father's heart. If he performs well enough, his father will accept him. After being turned away by this man who in most society you are supposed to follow in their footsteps. You're supposed to aspire to become like them. So Shinji now has an opportunity to get the love that he has lacked throughout his life. And while I myself cannot necessarily say I was not loved, my parents were very kind, there was a part of me that felt like I was not good enough for those around me, and that I had to find a way to make myself better, to claw for a true representation of their love. I felt like I was not worthy of it, and I had to make myself worthy. I had to find a way to do this. And this is exactly what Shinji struggles with. Shinji is this character who so desperately wants to be loved, just as I had wanted to when I watched this show. So that's why I related to him so much. Now, to understand the rest of the story, we also have some other characters we have to talk about. Misato herself, she is eventually designated as Shinji's caretaker. So Shinji begins living with her, and this is another figure that Shinji now immediately wants to impress with his skills, with his potential skills, I guess I should say. So Misato takes him in, but even within Misato, she has her own issues that she's fighting through, and it's these issues that make her a poor leader for Shinji to follow. She herself is deeply traumatized from events when she was a child, from difficulty with her own father, and so despite being an adult, she has almost a lack of development that she herself did not when she was a child, and this creates a chain, I guess I should say, of her own self-hatred, her own difficulties with self-acceptance, her own struggles and personal failures and belief of inadequacies. So, as you might assume, having this person who is already deeply traumatized and has their own many deep fundamental issues that they have not worked through, this is not a good role model for Shinji to try to gain the favor of. Now, some other characters that are also important and also have their own issues are Shinji's peers, namely Asuka and Rei. Now, in Evangelion, there are two other main pilots, Asuka and Rei. Asuka is a German, half Japanese. Great combination there. And she lives in Germany. That's where the Evangelion was originally created. Her Evangelion 2, that's where it originally was, but it's being shipped to Japan. So we meet her as they're on the boat traveling to Japan. We get to see the characters intermingle, and our first instances of her are seeing that she is on the outside, she presents as a confident, cocky, kind of strong-willed person, wants to present herself as self-reliant. She doesn't need acceptance from anybody. And while these present as a confident exterior, what we realize later on is that she only presents this way because she has similar inadequacies that Shinji and even Misato have. Her mother, spoiler warning, this is a major spoiler warning, so you might want to skip ahead, but her mother ended up hanging herself. And because her mother hung herself, she started to think that she was not good enough for her mom. She was not good enough for her parent, and that's why she killed herself. And so this trauma that Asuka experienced as a young child made her immediately want to present herself as the most dependable, the most reliable, and the most powerful, because she believed these were ways to keep people that were important to her close. But in a contrast, in a almost paradox, she also, after that trauma, she didn't want to be close to anyone because of fear of being hurt the same way that she was. And so these two things kind of are constantly fighting each other within her psyche, where she is trying to prove to everyone that she is dependable, that she is the person to follow, the one that they can put their faith in. But she also doesn't want to have any feelings for these people, because if she does, she's afraid she's going to get hurt. And once again, this message deeply resonated with me, because I myself put a lot of pressure onto my skills in sports, in academia, in extracurriculars. I wanted to be the one people looked at and said, that guy is good. That guy knows what he's doing. And it was this pressure that I put onto myself that actually had the adverse, where I did not believe that I was there. No matter what people told me, I believed I had to get to a higher plane. I had to become better, despite the reassurances of those around me. And I'm sure that she had a similar experience, where no matter how much praise she could have gotten, namely she probably didn't get, because they weren't very big on dishing it out, but she did not receive the gratitude that she wanted to, which in reality probably didn't even exist. Now, another important character we have to talk about is Rei. Now, Rei is a bit of an enigma, because even for myself, she's hard to get a read on. She is, without spoiling a major point in the story, she's not exactly the same as Shinji and Asuka. And she kind of struggles with this battle of self-acceptance, perhaps self-reliance, maybe, where she is so used to just following orders and existing purely to pilot the Evangelion that she almost doesn't have her own self-autonomy. We learn why later on. And it's this battle of almost depersonhood. She loses any semblance of self because of what her job is. And this is something I struggle with less, but something many people probably could relate to, where they are so focused on following the goals set out for them that they lose their own personhood. Now, these three characters there are three main characters, so of course they intermingle, they fight. Shinji and Asuka butt heads quite a bit, because Shinji and Asuka are both seeking people to care about, but almost in opposite ways. Shinji so desperately wants people to care about him that he's doing anything to get them to like him. He's a suck-up. He's a pushover. Whereas Asuka doesn't want to have people she cares about, but wants people to rely on her. So these two things are almost incompatible, at least in these two people's minds, where Asuka wants to care about the people around her, but her fear of getting hurt stops her from it. Whereas Shinji wants to have people care about him, but his own belief in his inadequacies stops him from believing that anyone could care about him. And Rei's lack of personhood stops her from being able to create genuine connections or foster or and take care of these connections with her peers. And this dynamic of the inability to mesh is such an important one, especially for myself when I was around this age. Is I also felt like I was not necessarily ostracized. I felt as if I could not exist around my peers because I wasn't good enough, because I wasn't raising myself to the expectation I wanted to be at. And so it was because of my own mental health that I was pushing myself away from the people around me, the people that supported me and cared about me. And I was lucky enough to have these people care about me and support me. Whereas they did not. They did not have the leadership nor the peers to be able to lift you out of that bad place. Now, this character analysis is so important because it drives the development of the story itself. And it's because of this development that we see a lot of things happen. We see difficulty working together, which leads in casualties. Difficulty in personal belief, self confidence, that also results in damages and casualties and issues of the sort. And it's these mental health battles that these children are facing that are not getting medicated, that not necessarily that are not getting resolved. Since they're not getting resolved, things only continue to get worse and worse for everyone in the story, despite getting victories. But after each victory, that's not enough, because when you are in this sort of mental state, it doesn't matter how much you win, you can only focus on your losses. Now, this drives the story to eventually the climax where they fight more angels. They get to a diversion in the story where the story breaks off into two endings. The original ending of the original series, which is albeit the more positive ending, and then the end of Evangelion ending. The original ending, I will briefly touch on, as it's Shinji learning that the path to healing exists within himself, that he cannot rely on those around him to love him, because how can you accept love from someone else if you can't even accept love from yourself? This was and is incredibly powerful to me, because how can I accept the words that people are telling me, the praises, the affirmations that I'm getting from those around me, if I myself could not find it within my own heart to love myself, to look at myself in the mirror and believe that I am good enough despite my inadequacies, despite these battles that I am fighting within myself. I need to find a way to accept myself and say that it's okay not to be perfect, but I can still strive to become better. That these two things not cancel each other out. That I can love myself and be happy with myself and be proud of myself, but also strive to continue to grow and learn and become a better person. And this is a great ending, but it kind of is overshadowed by the alternative ending, which is the movie end of Evangelion, where essentially it is the opposite. End of Evangelion is an incredibly depressing movie. It's an amazing movie, beautiful visuals, but the ending is much more pessimistic. And while there is room for hope at the end, because there are still, Shinji and Asuka survive, and while they look at the wreckage of the world around them, there is a potential for change, but it essentially ends in the decimation of humanity against the consent of humanity. The third impact is what it's called. That's not really a spoiler. You kind of learn about that pretty soon. But and essentially, because of this calamity, literally all of humanity is not necessarily dead. And again, this would be a spoiler, so I won't go into the depths of it, but it ends in essentially the decimation of the human race. And it's an incredibly pessimistic ending where Shinji cannot find it within himself to come together with the broader of humanity, and it's because of this self-rejection that he rejects from the. It is a much more pessimistic ending because neither of them get any closure. They exist without the realization that all of this could have been avoided if they had a better foundation for them to grow on. And I think in reality, given the circumstances, this is probably the more realistic end. Because how could. There was no one to guide Shinji to the original ending. Well, except for one character that you learn about, but I won't touch much on that. But without the leadership that is so necessary for the development of any youth, without that, you almost inevitably go down self-destructive paths. And this is the reality of End of Evangelion, is the lack of care that and the lack of nurturing that came from the adults who are responsible for that, and the lack of acceptance of that, because even if they did, he couldn't accept that within himself, and mainly due to the lack of care and nurturing that he did not get from the people around him. And this, while much more pessimistic ending, is probably a more realistic ending for someone who goes through what he went through. Instead of being able to find it within himself to love himself without anyone to help him through that, he becomes self-destructive, and in his own self-destructive habits, he destroys the world around him, quite literally. And it's this ending that is so impactful because it kind of shows the pessimistic reality that exists in a lot of our society. So much of our society has and can be reflected upon the actual story of Evangelion, the self-hatred, the personal failures, the inadequacy. A lot of people can relate to that. And a lot of the times it's not properly fostered. Sometimes it is, and I'd say the majority of times it's at least dealt with. But this is kind of showing the extreme to which people who are not cared for well can end up. And I say all of this because End of Evangelion perfect represents what Gurren Lagann opposes. That's why I will transition into Gurren Lagann. Now, of course, I could go into a deep dive of the Evangelion series, and honestly, I would love to, but go by episode and explain the effects that we see within the characters and within the story, but that might make this a little too long. So instead, I will transition to Evangelion's other side of the coin, dare I say, where I start to talk about my favorite show ever, Gurren Lagann. Now, Gurren Lagann is a much less depressing show, and that is a key theme. Gurren Lagann, similar to Evangelion, is a mech anime where you are fighting in these giant robots to protect the future of humanity. Now, dare I say, the main difference, or I guess before I touch on that, let's talk about the main character, Simone. Now, Simone and Shinji are very much so the same character, at least in the beginning. And I say this because both of them struggle with almost the exact same battles that they have to overcome. They don't think that they are reliable enough. They don't think they're good enough. They don't feel accepted by their peers, and because of this, they feel like there's something wrong within themselves. Shinji is depressed and sad because he was abandoned by his family. Simone is an orphan because his family was killed in an earthquake. And in both cases, they believe that if only they were better, they could have stopped the loss of family. So there are a lot of similarities between these two characters. And it's these similarities that also reflected on me when I watched Gurren Lagann. Now, I watched Evangelion before. I watched that in my freshman year of high school. And I watched Gurren Lagann in my sophomore year of high school. So I was about 15 or 16 when I was watching Gurren Lagann. Now, I had made decent progress on my own journey of self-acceptance. I was happier. I felt more loved by the people around me. I could accept the love from other people because I cared about my own self. And I think this perfectly relates to the positivity of Gurren Lagann's own story, because my worst time mentally, I watched Evangelion, the incredibly depressing show, and one of my best times mentally, I watched Gurren Lagann, an incredibly happy and positive show. Now, of course, I was a little bit farther advanced than Simone was at the beginning of the series, but one of the reasons Simone has any confidence within himself at all is because of, dare I say, one of, if not the most important characters thematically, and that is Kamina. Now, before I continue, I guess I should preface, Simon's skill is drilling. He's a very good digger. He's quite literally known as Simone the Digger, and he's incredibly talented with a drill. He's the best one in the village, so he's a very valuable asset. But despite this, he still has self-confidence issues. Now, similar to Shinji, he's very talented, but despite this talent, he isn't able to see it within himself without having someone else show it to him first. So anyway, Simone is digging around. He finds a little necklace with a mini drill on it. He then eventually finds a small mech about the size, a little, big enough for a person to sit in, but not much bigger than an actual person. And this drill that he found is the key to this mech. Now, Kamina is such a wonderful character, a character I aspire to be like almost every single day. And this is because of his abilities to uplift those around him. Now, I talked about leadership in Evangelion and how there was a lack of any, how all the highest figures were self-absorbed or had their own issues to fight through, or just were not a positive role model to begin with. Now, this exists in the world of Gurren Lagann. In the first episode, you meet the chief of this underground village that they live in, and he is strictly business. He wants you to drill holes to expand the village, and in return you get food. You work or you die is essentially his motto. So it's not an uplifting spirit. And yet we have this man, or dare I say boy, because he's in his late teenage years, named Kamina, where despite this depressing and almost this terrible life that he lives underground in darkness, working to have any food, he still has a spark within him, a dream within him to break through this ceiling and see the upper world finally. And we learn, we learned that he was taken up there when he was young. You learn this pretty soon, but he was taken up there when he was young and saw the true sky. He went past the ceiling and saw the true sky with his father, but he was too scared to venture out. So his father said, "When you are ready, come up to the surface and join me." And it's this dream to be reunited with his own positive role model that makes him so excited to break through these boundaries that had been set for him. And it's this positive attitude, this belief that he will one day get to his dream that is almost contagious to everyone around him, but specifically to Simone. Kamina's belief in a better world, his belief that they can take their futures into their own hands and create something that most people don't believe is possible, a brighter future. This belief that if he goes to the surface, life will be better and that there's no reason for them to stay where they're at. He is quite literally the embodiment of progress. He is unapologetic. He is bold. He's a little headstrong. But despite all this, his confidence in himself is perceived as the driving factor for many people to fall in line behind him. And I mean, we see this in the beginning of the series, where in the first episode where he has other people also listening to him, and they eventually abandon him because they're afraid they're not going to get food. But we see it later on in the series where other people mobilize to fight for this future that he wants. So eventually, Simone and Kamina and their new friend Yoko, who actually came from the surface, I guess to say, have a fight with a giant Gundam or a giant mech, and are able to break out because of this own mech that Simone found drilling around. He, with the support of Kamina, is able to defeat this mech that was threatening everyone. They get to the sky, and they, for the first time, Simone and Kamina, get to see what the upper world is like. But to their chagrin, it is not at all like what they had thought, because there are these giant mechs roaming around the planet, literally trying to exterminate any humans that come to the surface. And this is similar to the plight of Shinji in Evangelion. There are these existential threats to humanity's existence, and it is up to him and this small group of people to fight back and try to survive. So again, very, very similar themes here. But the major difference, the huge, most important difference, is Kamina, is the leaders that are in either stories. Evangelion fails to uplift the people fighting for humanity. And when the people who are your first line of defense are not well taken care of, it tends to become a disaster. If the first line of defense isn't mentally prepared for war, how are they going to fight back? Whereas if you have a first line of defense that is led well with a charismatic leader who inspires the people around him, that will create a atmosphere that is more likely to win. So where am I going with all this? Well, it's to say that Kamina does exactly what I am praising him for. He inspires not just him and his small team to fight against the oppression of these robots, these beastmen is who pilot them, to fight against the oppression and to try to create a better future, try to destroy this hierarchy that is oppressing humanity and create a future where humans can live on the surface. This is such a beautiful message because it is exactly what symbolized from the very first episode. To break through your confinements, you may be underground, you may be in a hard place that seems impossible to get out of. And to many of the people who were there, it was impossible to get out of. But his belief in himself, his belief in Simone, his belief in the people around him creates the opportunity to break through the ceiling and get to where they want it to be. And what else I think is so beautiful about this analogy is when they got to their goal, it was not their ideal. And a lot of people, if they reach their goal but realize it's not what they wanted it to be, they will lay down and die. They will accept their fate. But that is not what Kamina and Simone do. Specifically Kamina. He sees that his goal is not what he wanted it to be, and he refuses to accept that. And so he says, we made our first goal. We got to the surface. The surface isn't perfect. We're going to make it perfect. And that is the beauty of Gurren Lagann. It is the antithesis to Evangelion, because Evangelion's story is you have a goal, you have to meet this goal, and if you don't, you will not be accepted. Gurren Lagann's is we have this goal. If we meet it and it's not what we want it to be, we will continue to fight until it's where we want it to be. That is the beauty. That is the flip of the coin. That is the difference between heads and tails. Gurren Lagann and Evangelion. And this is barely even the first half of the series of Gurren Lagann. And it's already showing these beautiful parallels to an equally beautiful but opposingly pessimistic story. Now, the reason I love Gurren Lagann, and the reason I recommend it to everyone, especially if you haven't watched it, and if this hasn't already sold on you, is because of what happens after episode 8. Now, this is very conflicting for me, because I need this. It's such an impactful episode for multiple reasons, but the spoiler is so big that you can't even really contextualize the rest of the series without revealing the spoiler. So major spoiler alert. I'd highly recommend, if you haven't watched Evangelion and if you haven't watched Gurren Lagann, to watch both those series and then come back and reflect with me. If you don't want to, that's fine. I'm not your dad. I have no power over you. But from this point on, as much as I will try to mitigate it, there will be spoilers. So, for your own sake, if you want to go into both these shows, or at least Gurren Lagann, completely unimpacted, please stop here. If you don't really care that much, I'd love if you continue to watch, because I'm incredibly passionate about this. Anyway, so season 8, major development in the story. And this development leads to Simone almost descending into a worse state than the state that he was at. He is depressed. He feels like he is inadequate. His drill stops working, and or I guess the drill that he found, the key drill, and he can no longer pilot his mech. And it's because of this development that the rest of Team Gurren don't know how to proceed. They have lost incredibly important assets, and these losses have left the entire team demoralized. And without Lagann, which is the name of Simone's mech, without Lagann, they have no leg up. Lagann is their secret weapon. Simone's drilling and his perseverance and his power to fight through difficult trials and tribulations, that is what even got them to the point where they are doing so much better than humanity in the past. But Simone is in a point that is almost exactly the same as Shinji in the beginning, where he believes that he was not good enough. He believes he is the reason everything is going wrong. He believes he is the reason he will never live up to the expectations that Kamina has set before him. He has no he has no self-confidence. He has no belief that he is the one to do it. He has no belief in himself, is essentially what I'm trying to get at. And it's this lack of confidence in oneself that leads the entire team to feel like there is no point to continue. And while they are resolute and they want to find a way through this, they feel as if it is hopeless. And this is when another excuse me. This is when another incredibly important character is revealed. And this character is Nia. Nia is Simone's love interest, essentially. She is a princess that is saved from death, essentially. And she never gets to know Kamina. She never experiences his power and his verboseness and his confidence. And it's because of this new perspective that she is able to get Simone past his negative self imagery, because Simone is the one who saves her, and it's despite being depressed and sad, he's still able to save someone. And though he may not see it, Nia believes that Nia's reason for being alive is because Simone saves her. So even though she doesn't have Kamina's influence, she sees the remnants of Kamina within Simone without even having met Kamina. And it's this that is able to get Simone through his challenges and finally learn to love himself. He finally learns how to love himself and express this because he realizes that despite not being Kamina, despite not being his bro, he is still able to persevere. And that is the beauty of Gurren Lagann. The series continues. It goes through another 14 or so episodes, and it gets even more large scale. They eventually go to space and they fight what is essentially God, what is the equivalent to this omnipowerful being that can see, that oversees everything, that controls the entirety of known existence. And they eventually fight that being, and despite having the limitations of just being a person, it is also the beauty of Gurren Lagann is that you can just be a normal person. You can be weak flesh and bone. You can bleed. You can cry. You can feel inadequate. But despite all of this, your humanity is what makes you so powerful. It is your belief in yourself, your will, your soul, your own mind that controls what you are capable of. And with your own and with personal perseverance and self-belief, you are able to break through any boundary that is set for you. You can do the impossible, you can see the invisible, you can break the unbreakable, and you can touch the untouchable. Some lines from a song within Gurren Lagann. And that is the beauty of the theming. That is the beauty of the story, that it teaches people, it teaches the viewer that no matter how hopeless it seems, no matter how lost you are, no matter who you lose, as long as you can remain human, as long as you can reignite that spark of love and belief within yourself, that is what creates opportunity. That is what allows you to get out of those dark spots. And this is precisely why I think it is the perfect, I don't even want to say antithesis. This is why it is the perfect pair to Evangelion, because, well, Evangelion shows you the pessimistic sides of reality, that life is daunting and hard, and you will always have battles that you struggle with, and that you may not ever even be able to solve these struggles, and that the world is hard and deadly, and even the most talented people cannot always break through, and even the strongest, smartest people cannot always get what they want. Gurren Lagann takes that story, and instead of descending into the pessimism and the depression and the self-doubt, it takes those exact same themes and instead turns it to, it's true, the universe is cold and depressing, and it will crush you with its immense weight. Your goals may never turn out how you want them to be. You will constantly come up against wall after wall after wall. But despite all of this, it is your own perseverance that determines where you end up. Despite all of this, it is your own will and your own soul, and it is the humanity within you that determines whether you stay where you are or you create a path forward. And this is such a beautiful theme because it is true. Almost nothing in your life will ever go how you want it to. It's almost impossible for it to. You will always have challenges. You will always be fighting these thoughts within your own head that you're not enough. I fight these thoughts in my own head. I deal with my own struggles every single day. Recently, I learned that something I had been dreaming of for years, something I had spent years investing towards, may never come true because something I have no control over, something that is genetically predisposed within me. And despite this, when faced with this, when faced with the possibility that my dreams or that my dream will never come true, I have two options: Evangelion or Gurren Lagann. Do I cry and coddle myself and believe that I'm not enough, and believe that I have failed and that there's no place to go, and dive deeper into this self-emulation of burning myself out and destroying any chance of hope that I possibly had, descending into this pessimism, descending into this reality of, well, I've failed, there is a wall in my way, I can't move forward? Or do I choose Gurren Lagann? Do I choose to analyze where I'm at, see the difficulty that is facing me, and find a way through it? Even if that means I can no longer go the way I wanted to, I still have to get past this wall. I have to find a way to break through this obstacle by any means necessary and get somewhere better than where I'm at now. And then I can reassess, and then I can figure out where I want to go from there. And I personally have dedicated my life, my own personal story, to always trying to follow Gurren Lagann, because there is no benefit from the pessimism of Evangelion. It is self-destructive. But Gurren Lagann, no matter where you're at, shows you that there is some way past it. You may have to go horizontal. You may not always move forward. You may, going back to the drilling, which is incredibly important, and you might start being able to piece why. You may be drilling through the ground and hit a spot that is too hard to break through. Sometimes it's the finesse that you have to do. Sometimes you have to change how you approach that hard spot to break through it. Other times you simply can't go through it and you have to find another way around. You have to pivot. And so now, if your goal was to go forward, this hard spot is stopping you from going forward. So now you have to go horizontal. You can no longer go straight forward. You have to go lateral to get around it. So it may feel like you're staying in the same place because you're not moving forward anymore. But then eventually you will find a place to move forward, a place that is no longer as hard as it was back there, and you'll be able to continue forward. And it's this belief that no matter where you are, there is a path forward that I model my life after. I try to emulate this in every possible personal experience, whether it be not being able to follow the dream that I once had, whether it be I lose out on something that was important to me. I luckily have not dealt with the passing of a loved one yet, but in the case of that happening, which is inevitable, it will happen one day, I can either choose to go Evangelion and bottle myself up, or go Gurren Lagann and push past the pain, get past the inevitable grief, and find a way forward. And it would be impossible to do that without the support of those around you. And once again, this is why both of these stories are masterpieces. I don't want you to take away from this that Evangelion is sad and depressing and you shouldn't watch it because it's bad lessons. Quite the opposite, actually. It shows you what a destructive path is. It warns you of how many people end up because they cannot find hope. It is a beautiful story that shows you the destruction of pessimism. Whereas Gurren Lagann is the flip, as I've continuously mentioned. It is the existence of hope. It is the unbridled joy of continuing. But neither of these stories would be possible without the casts within them. Gurren Lagann would not be possible without Kamina believing in Simone, without Yoko learning why, without Nia to be there to reignite the spark within Simone's heart. And it is the same with Evangelion. Shinji would not be where he was if it were not for the pessimism of the people around him, the self-isolation of Asuka, the trauma that Misato had to go through, and the resentment that his own father felt towards him. Shinji would probably be in a substantially better place if he had someone like Kamina, and inversely, Simone would be in a much worse place if he had someone like Gendo, Shinji's father. So it's not to say one story is better than the other. It's more so to say they are the branching of a single path. And these paths are determined by those around you and how they are how they either help you grow or keep you stagnant. Shinji and Simone at the beginning of each series are essentially the exact same character. They are young men, essentially the same age, around 14, who do not believe in themselves, who do not see themselves as deserving love, who see themselves as social outcasts, who have lost parents on both sides. They are the same character at the beginning. But the paths they go down are determined not just by their own decisions, but by the influence that those around them have on them. Like I just said, Shinji and Simone would be in opposite places if the cast around them switched. And that is why these shows complement each other so well. It gives you the perfect perspective of what even your life, and for me, what my life could have been, depending on which way I chose to go. I could have chosen to go down Shinji's path. And for a lot of people, that leads to incredibly destructive choices. Things like self-harm, like suicide, and even with less extreme things, you start to rig yourself. You try less hard in school. You think that there is no future for you. You think that you don't deserve a future. You think negative, pessimistic, sad thoughts, and it's these thoughts that are self-destructive, that do not lead you to creating a better path. Or you can choose, and the path I chose is the Gurren Lagann path. You can go from a sad, depressed, lack of self-confidence in yourself. You can go from that towards the path that may have lower lows, but also higher highs. You can choose the path of pessimism or the path of optimism. You can choose the path of inflicted injury, or you can choose the path of self-growth and advancement. And while I personally think there is a better choice, I think the best path is Gurren Lagann, to believe in yourself and to fight through any issues that you may come across. The choice is ultimately yours. And of course, there are so many factors within one's own life. I was lucky enough to have incredibly supportive parents who loved me, who wanted to see the best for me, who I had incredibly supportive teachers who were the same and helped protect me from my own personal negative thoughts. I had friends who pointed it out and asked if I was all right. And some people may not have that luxury. And like I said, the supporting cast around you is so important to your own growth, to what path you choose to go. A lot of the times when it is not obvious, a lot of the times it's not obvious that the people around you heavily dictate which path you end up going down. And that's why I so strongly recommend watching these shows, because if you can analyze them well, if you can break them down and figure out why these characters went down the path they are, you can reflect in your own life. And once you are able to have some introspection, you are able to start to actually seize your own destiny. I mean, if Simone didn't have someone to, or didn't have an influence to get him to start down the path of positivity, he would have probably went down the path of negativity. And same with Shinji. If Shinji didn't have such negative role models, he probably could have made it to the path of positivity. But what I'm trying to get at is, if you can become introspective and analyze your own life, you can actually rewrite what path you go down to. Because just like in either story, in the end, what you learn is that you have to create your own choices. Every choice you make is your own, even if you are influenced by those around you. And once you can break through the influence, well, I guess you can't always entirely break through, but once you can analyze the influence of other people around you, you start to be able to better control where you end up. So you may not be as lucky as I am to have such loving, caring family and friends who can help you. But once you can start to analyze your own reality, your own material conditions, you can start to reroute yourself, even with those negative influences around you. And in the best case scenario, you may even start to adopt new positive influences. You know, people say family or friends are the family you choose. And in both stories, family is almost irrelevant. It's the people that they choose to be around that are so heavily influential. Simone has no living family. Kamina is his brother purely through word of mouth. Kamina just says that he's his brother now, which is, literally family you choose. Or Yoko, Nia, other important characters in the stories. All of these people are people they meet and they enjoy being around and that they accept into their own found family. Evangelion is this similar, where Shinji, yes, family's still alive. Gendo's his biological father, but he wants nothing to do with him. So he only has the people that he chooses to be around. He has Misato wasn't really a choice, but it ended up as it was. He has Asuka and Rei, and he has his friends in the school. So it's this found family. It's the choices that you make and the people you choose to be around that can heavily influence which way you go down. And if you are listening to this video and have family that you don't think you can ever get yourself away from, that is true. That is an obstacle. But just like everything else, it may be an obstacle You either have to get past through or just have exist there while you continue, while you find a different route. You may never be able to cut your family off, even if they are negative, or you may not want to because you still love them, and that is a valid belief. But when you start to analyze the things around you, when you start to think deeply about how your life is impacted, you can start to change how much each aspect of your life impacts your life. Take Simone, for example. He had immense grief. Probably, honestly, a lower low than even Shinji had, arguably. But he just had to live with that grief. And he chose to get through it because of the people he had around him, namely Nia. So you can do similar. You can have a negative person or experience constantly weighing you down. You can be battling depression, anxiety, negative family members, people who are mean to you. But it's when you choose to find a group that positively uplifts you. It's when you choose to be around people who care about you, that is when you can move down the path of growth, the path of acceptance. And you may never be able to shake the negative things weighing you down. These things may stay with you your entire life, whether it be family or a mental health condition. But I still full-heartedly believe that as long as you continue to persevere, as long as you continue to look for ways through your biggest issues, you will create a better tomorrow for yourself and for the people who come after you. And that is the beauty of these stories. Evangelion and Gurren Lagann are two sides of the same coin. They are two branches of the same path. And they can perfectly be attributed to anyone's life. The analysis that you can get from these two shows are the perfect guidelines to model your own life after. You can choose pessimism or you can choose optimism. You can fight through your most difficult battles or you can let them drag you down. You can live with the grief and the pain and the horrendousness of reality, or you can not. And it's these messages that make both shows so worth watching, especially with each other, especially one right after the other, to see in real time how they correlate. So I guess I should end it all by saying, or end this video by saying, end it all is not a good term to use when talking about stuff like Evangelion. But to end off this commentary, it's to kind of point and gesture you towards these two beautiful pieces of media. And even if you have seen them before, kind of take a second to analyze them. Maybe rewatch them and reanalyze them. I sure am. Think about how these stories, even though they are specific stories, that fantastical stories that are never going to be true in real life, think about how you can take the art from these two stories, the expression, the theming, the rhetoric, all of those from these two stories, and how you can apply them from your own lives. What in your life is similar to Evangelion, and what in your life is similar to Gurren Lagann? What can you cut out of your life to head down the path you want to go down? And in the end, it is your choice. So, I hope you enjoyed listening to me rant about these two shows that are so important to me. And I hope that one day you too can experience the beauty that is these shows and be able to analyze them and be able to apply them to your own life and to become better for it. Because I truly hope everyone watching, if anyone's watching at all, will take the beauty of these stories and become better for it. So, I appreciate your time. Anyone who watched, anyone who listened, anyone who put it on mute just to give me a view, and anyone who even just saw it on the timeline. I thank you. I appreciate you. And all I ask is that you continue to support me or hate on me. Honestly, it gets me clicks either way. So, thank you very much. Have a beautiful day. And believe in the you who believes in yourself. Hi, and thanks for your time. Watching that video means a lot to me because I enjoy talking about these types of things. If you have any feedback, please leave it down below or send me a message personally. Anything to help really means the world to me. So, thanks again for your time, for listening, or just leaving it on mute, because honestly, I don't blame you. Have a wonderful day, and I hope I see you in the next one.